So now I want to return to a question that I posed at the very beginning. Can a computer keep a secret? Well, a toaster doesn't have the circuitry to keep a secret from you, presumably because it doesn't have complex enough circuitry. It doesn't have a team of rivals fighting it out under the hood. But could AI keep a secret from you? Well, people started asking this question some years ago using what are called adversarial networks. Just think of this like networks that are pitted against one another, and they each might have a different incentive structure. So back in 2016, a group of researchers at Google Brain wanted to know whether neural networks could develop their own encryption methods independently without human guidance. So they set up 3 independent networks. The first was named Alice, and Alice's task was to send a secret message to Bob. The second network, Bob, his job was to decode the message sent by Alice. And then there was a third network named Eve. Now Eve represented an eavesdropper. Her role was to try to intercept and decrypt Alice's message. So they set these 3 networks running. Alice and Bob were trained collaboratively to ensure Bob could correctly decode the messages, and Eve was trained adversarially. Her job was to improve her decryption attempts, and the system evolved dynamically. As Alice and Bob became better at secure communication, Eve became more sophisticated in breaking their encryption, forcing Alice and Bob to improve further. Now, the outcome was kind of incredible because Alice and Bob's neural networks learned to create their own encryption strategies, and this was without explicit programming. In other words, the encryption strategy was never told to them by a human. So over time, those two succeeded in creating encrypted communications that Eve couldn't decrypt. They outpaced Eve's efforts. The key here is that the encryption methods developed by Alice were not human readable or interpretable. The system invented its own cryptographic methods based on its training objectives. Very rapidly, the 2 neural networks figured out how to keep a secret, not only from Eve, but from everybody. They developed a totally novel and dynamic cryptographic system. So that was one study. Then in 2017, the Facebook AI research group was working on developing AI agents that could negotiate. But when they left these agents to their own devices, they saw unexpected behaviors. So here was the setup. The goal of the experiment was to train these 2 bots, these 2 AI agents, to negotiate with each other to achieve their objectives. So the 2 AI agents are tasked with dividing items between them, like books or balls or hats. Each item has a different value to each of the bots, and each bot has the objective to maximize their score by getting the items that they value the most, and they're rewarded based on how well they do. Okay, so they set these bots running, but pretty soon, 2 surprises emerged. The first was that the bots started using tricky tactics. They would sometimes pretend to be uninterested in a particular item to convince the other bot to concede it. This is called feigned disinterest. And of course, humans do this in negotiations to manipulate the perceived value of something that they are interested in. But it certainly wasn't expected that this would emerge on its own in an artificial neural network. The second thing was that the bots started to communicate strangely. They developed their own shorthand language to negotiate. So bot 1 would say, I want one book, and bot 2 would respond, okay, you, 2 balls. Now, why did their language start to turn funny like this? It's because the AI wasn't explicitly incentivized to stick with human readable language. Instead, the reward system only focused on achieving successful negotiations. So the bots optimized their communication for efficiency rather than for clarity to humans. So it made sense to the bots, but eventually became unintelligible to the human reader. Now, this experiment gives us a few deep insights. The first thing it shows us is emergent behaviors. AI agents can develop creative strategies to achieve their goals, and this is typically not anticipated by the researchers. In this case, what developed was something like a secret, or at least we would say a non-truth, because the AI would pretend one thing when it wanted something else. The experiment also demonstrated that, if it's not explicitly constrained, AI will optimize for its objectives in ways that maybe don't align with human readability. And if you extrapolate this, you can see this is another way that AI might keep a secret from us, even if it's not intending to. Just like the network's Alice and Bob, it might just learn how to speak a language that we simply don't understand.